What is the Feast of Tabernacles for you? What does it mean? You see, in less than or about 20 days from now, we are going to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Of course, before that, we have the Day of Trumpets, and then we have the Day of Atonement. But still, most of us here have been keeping the Feast of Tabernacles. Personally, my first time to keep the Feast of Tabernacles was year 2003. So this would be about 20 years for me continually keeping the feast. Some of you might be there for the first time. I know some of you who have registered for the first time for the Feast of Tabernacles, and I congratulate and I'm happy to see you there. But you see, brethren, if we are not careful, there are some instances that we might develop this false belief, this wrong connotation of what the Feast of Tabernacles really is. So, in this afternoon, I want to discuss 3 ways we got it wrong about the Feast of Tabernacles. 3 ways we got it wrong about the Feast of Tabernacles. And some of these are not new, but this is going to be a good reminder for us as we move closer to this day, the holy day, the Feast of Tabernacles. So the first way that we got it wrong, this is the first point that I have for you. The Feast of Tabernacles is optional. The Feast of Tabernacles is optional. We, in the Assembly of Yahweh or the Church of God, we believe that the people of Yahweh should still keep the Feast of Tabernacles. However, believing doesn't automatically mean obeying. Sadly, some of us might still think that keeping the Feast of Tabernacles is optional. It is something that we can only keep when it is convenient. We will just keep the Feast of Tabernacles when all things will work out. When it is, our schedule is right, there's nothing else to do on that week, we can just go to the Feast of Tabernacles. But you see, brethren, it is important for us to realize, and I'm sure that all of us, or most of us have already known this, that the feast is not a matter of choice. It is not optional, but it is mandatory. It is a divine command from God that we should keep every year. Now, I don't have to go through the scriptures. If you have questions on why we should keep the Feast of Tabernacles, you can approach our pastor or our elder about this. But in this message, brethren, I want to share with you, or I want to convince you that we should all have the willingness. We are so willing to keep the feast to the point that we are willing to sacrifice everything for it. Now, you might think, isn't that a little overacting, Josh? Are you sure we should be ready to forsake everything just to keep this feast? What's the big deal? Right? Well, I will tell you. Let's go to John 7, verse 1 to 2. Let's study the type of commitment or the level of commitment that is necessary for us to keep the feast. Let's study the life or the example given to us by our Master, Yeshua, the Messiah. Or for most people outside the church would call him Jesus Christ. Let's go to John 7 verse 1. It says here, after these things, Yeshua walked in Galilee, for he did not want to walk in Judea. Why? What was the reason that Yeshua don't want to walk in Judea? Because the Jews sought to kill him. So his life is in danger. In verse 2 it says here, now the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was at hand. So perhaps this is just like right now, maybe you're just counting by days or weeks, and it would be already the Feast of Tabernacles. And then in verse 3, his brother therefore said to him, depart from here and go into Judea, that your disciples also may see the works that you are doing. For no one does anything in secret, while he himself seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. So basically, his brothers are not really actually, in verse 5 it says, for even his brothers did not believe in him. So they were kind of sarcastic. They're saying that if you are truly the Messiah, show yourself. Why do you stay in Galilee? You have a bigger audience in Judea. Go there. That's how you reveal yourself. That is essentially what his brothers were saying to him. And then verse 6 says, Then Yahshua said to them, My time has not yet come, but your time is always ready. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify of it that its works are evil. You go up to the feast. I am not yet, okay? Take note of the word yet, because some translations remove this word yet, making our Messiah a liar. But in here, there's a word yet. I'm not yet going up to the feast, for my time has not yet fully come. So you see, brethren, Yahshua's life is in danger. If he's going to keep the feast, he would be exposing himself to danger. The high priest, the authorities may arrest him, and that's the time he would be killed. Now, if the feast is optional, then Yahshua might have just said that, oh, I cannot go to the feast. It's so dangerous. I cannot attend this feast. Maybe not this year. Perhaps next year I will keep the feast. After all, they keep the feast every year. So I still have a chance to go next year. Yet, this is not what Yahshua said. Let's go in verse 10 of the same chapter. It says, But when his brothers had gone up, then he also went up to the feast, not openly, but as it were, in secret. Can you see that, brethren? For Yahshua, it is not optional to go to the feast. Even if his life is in danger, he still chose to go to the feast. Now, how many of us here whose life is in danger when it comes to keeping the feast? How much more are we going to keep the feast when what is just in danger for us? Maybe some of us might be losing our job, might be losing some grades here and there. But Yahshua here is showing us that even if your life is in danger, you still have to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. This tells us that the Feast of Tabernacles is not a matter of personal convenience or preference, but it is something that is mandatory. So, what's holding you back from keeping the Feast of Tabernacles, brethren? What stands between you and following God's command? Maybe some of you would say, oh, I don't have enough money to go to the feast. I will not go. Maybe some of you, oh, we have classes during the feast. I will not go. Maybe some of you would say, oh, you mean that person will go to the feast? I don't like that person. I will not go to the feast because that person is in the feast. Is that how we think, brethren? Is that how our mindset is when it comes to the feast? So this is the first way people or we might have the wrong attitude when it comes to the feast. The Feast of Tabernacles is optional. So let's go to the second one, brethren. The second one is this. The Feast of Tabernacles is all about vacation. The Feast of Tabernacles is all about vacation. Now, imagine yourself celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles in a place like Eden Nature Park, one of the finest tourist destinations in the city. Towering pine trees, refreshing mountain breeze, and top-tier accommodations. It feels like it is a vacation, doesn't it? Plus, there's no work and there's no school obligations. And so it must be a vacation for all of us. Well, brethren, not exactly. Because the Feast of Tabernacles is far more than just a mere vacation. It's a profound spiritual experience that it's a week or more than a week that we're going to have to learn more about God's way of life. It is a time of learning, a time of fellowship, and most importantly, brethren, it's a time for us to get closer to our Heavenly Father. It is not just vacation. So, sometimes, brethren, if we get this wrong thinking, we might say, oh, I'm on vacation, so I don't need to assist or serve. I can just wake up at 9:30 a.m. when it is about to have the services. Maybe we would say that, oh, I will just remain in my accommodation. After all, it's a vacation. I don't have to go out there and to attend. Maybe we say, I can stay up all night. I can just play video games, browse Facebook endlessly, or indulge in movies and videos. because it's a vacation time. No, brethren, it is not vacation. The Feast of Tabernacles is a time of learning God's way of life. It is a time of rejoicing with the brethren, a time to learn about God, and a time to be closer to Him. That's why, brethren, there's a significant danger when we view the Feast of Tabernacles as solely as a vacation. And we know that it's more than that. And this leads us to the third and final point in this message. The third one is this: the Feast of Tabernacles is all about me. The Feast of Tabernacles is all about me. Now, reflecting on my own journey, brethren, keeping the feast, it was, I mentioned earlier to you, it's 2003. During at that time, and I'm looking back, there's an evolution of questions that I asked myself. When I first tried to, or attempted to keep the feast, that was 2003, and I only attended the last great day, the last day of the feast. And then after camp, the camp inspired me to be more active in church, and that's when I actually really kept it for 8 days. So at that time, the first question that was asked is, will you go to the feast? So that is the common question for perhaps beginners or first-timers. Will you go to the feast? And then as time goes by, as more and more years that you keep the feast, the next question would be, where will you keep the feast? Because at that time, we have plenty of different places. We have different festival sites. So that's the next question. You don't ask yourself anymore, will you go to the feast? It's already assumed that you will go to the feast. So that the next question was, where will you keep the feast? And then as the time goes by, as you keep the feast, the question changed into, how will I serve in the feast? How will I serve in the feast? That is the question that we should be asking right now. You see, brethren, behind a successful Feast of Tabernacles, there are people who work tirelessly. When you go to the feast, when I was way back in 2004, 5, 6, yes, my only job was to be there in the Feast of Tabernacles. I don't volunteer or do anything work behind the scene. I just go there. I just see the end product, but I didn't see the tireless effort that was put into that feast. You see, a successful feast is not an accident. It's never an accident. There are people who work together just to have a very successful one. That's why, brethren, the backdrop you see on our stage, someone designed that. The t-shirts you will have on the family day, someone went one by one to the malls just to complete the sizes, because one mall doesn't have this size, one mall does only have this, and they have to go to each of these. And the giveaways, those are not free. Someone paid for it. The activities, they have to think about that for the activities to be interesting. The messages, they have to write down those messages to prepare them for hours. The choir music, they have to practice for that. The special performances during the variety show, they have to work on that. So there's plenty of work that has been done before the Feast of Tabernacles. So this tells us, brethren, that there's the feast is not just a time to be served. It's an opportunity to serve one another. And that serving does not only start during the Feast of Tabernacles. It starts way more days before that. On January 20, 1961, brethren, John F. Kennedy famously said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." Similarly, brethren, in the context of the Feast of Tabernacles, I would like to rephrase this. Ask not what the feast can do for you, instead, ask what you can do for the feast. In Philippians 2 verse 4, brethren, let's read there, brethren, let's go there. Philippians 2 verse 4, it says, "Let each of you look out not only for your own interests." Don't just think about yourself, but also for the interests of others. Brethren, don't just show up in the feast. Do something even before the feast And by doing so, you will have a more positive contribution to the success of the feast. Don't just think about yourself. You might say, oh, I have second tithe. I have a lot of, maybe you just have this amount of second tithe. Don't just think about what you will buy for yourself, what shoes, what new clothes that you will buy. Think about how you can also help other brethren. Maybe you could sponsor. Maybe you could donate some giveaways. Maybe you could help out. So just don't think about yourself. Think of other people as well. So those are the 3 ways that we might get wrong about the Feast of Tabernacles. Just to recap, brethren, the Feast of Tabernacles is optional. The Feast of Tabernacles is a vacation. The Feast of Tabernacles is all about me. So, please, brethren, beware of these false beliefs as they can obscure the true purpose of the feast. Once we dispel these misconceptions, brethren, we can better appreciate the feast's significance and actively contribute to its success. With that, brethren, I hope and pray that each one of us is preparing not just for ourselves, but also for others. Let's come together in the spirit of unity and service. And brethren, I look forward to keeping the Feast of Tabernacles this year with you.